Hello everyone and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Information. I'm Jeannie Green. Thank you everyone for joining us once again. I hope the wind hasn't blown you away. It's been really rough here in Anchorage, but as usual we have a fabulous show for you. In Alaska, we could tell springtime is approaching. The days are longer. We look around us and see little bits of green here and there, especially this year with such strange weather. Another way that we could tell spring is approaching fast is a Nenana Ice Classic. And as you know, each year thousands guess when the ice is going to break and the river starts flowing. It's a great big event. But another thing people don't realize is that Nenana is a site of ancient Athabascan village. Today we take a look at the history of Nenana, Alaska right after this.
Hi, I'm Diane Balick. I'm from Holy Cross, Alaska, and Heartbeat will be right back.
Heartbeat Alaska is pleased to announce a brand new official hotel. We're brought to you now by Millennium Alaskan Hotel, the official hotel of Heartbeat Alaska. And
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Frontier Flying Service. Thank you, Frontier, for getting Heartbeat Alaska airborne.
Hi, I'm Mark from Scan Home, and we are proud to sponsor Heartbeat Alaska.
Scan Home, serving all of Alaska's home and office furnishing needs. Thank you, Scan Home, for making Heartbeat Alaska possible.
Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Brown's Electric Lighting Gallery. Thank you, Brown's Electric, for your generous support of Heartbeat Alaska.
We've been covering businesses, families, and individuals since before Alaska was a state. And we'll keep doing it until the glaciers melt on Mount McKinley. Primera Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alaska. We're here. We're with you.
Welcome back. The Athabascan word Nenana means a good place to camp between two rivers. And those two rivers are the Tanana River and the Nenana River. Nenana, Alaska is one of the last places that had contact with Western civilization, but it has turned into one of the most accessible villages in the state of Alaska. Nenana, a good place to camp between two rivers.
Most of the graves were right where the railroad went right through the dead endings and dug them out and put a railroad right over it.
They parked the vessel and he got off, and this chief came up to him and introduced himself as me Tanana Chief.
The Tanana Valley stretches almost as far as the eye can see, sloping down from the Alaska Range to Togateli Mountain. Pressed up against that long mountain on the north side of the valley is the Tanana River. Nenana is an Athabascan word that means a good place to camp between two rivers. And that's exactly what the Athabascans did. For centuries, they came here to this spot where the Nenana River joins the Tanana River to catch the huge runs of salmon and herds of caribou that migrated through the area each year.
At that time, Nenana was probably one of the largest Athabascan communities for sure on the Tanana River, but maybe even close on the Yukon River.
Blair Ketzler is the executive director of the Nenana Native Council. He's also a bit of a history buff.
And that during that time, there was about three distinct different tribes that lived in this area within a few mile radius. There was another tribe that was further up the river, the Tanana River, the Wood River tribe.
During the late 1800s, when traders and trappers were trekking across much of Alaska, the Tanana River remained isolated.
Where the Yukon River had a lot of river travel as far as back as 1860s. But no vessels ever ventured beyond the mouth. Probably the most rationale for not traveling up the Tanana River was the stories of the natives up in this area were considered very hostile. And so the miners and the explorers and trappers kind of kept out of this area based on those stories.
But the outside world was slowly making its way upriver. For the first time, things like salt and flour were making their way to Nenana through trade with other tribes further downriver. Then, in the summer of 1898, two ships turned off the Yukon into the Tanana and started upstream.
There was actually two sternwheelers, the Tanana Chief and the Potlatch, were both traveling together. And when they left Fort Gibbons, which is now Tanana today, they found the first community, which more likely was a community called Crossjacket. And a sternwheeler can only travel between 30 and 40 miles, maybe 50 miles at the most, between intervals of stopping and having to get loaded up with firewood.
When Captain Morgan reached that first village, he found the natives had already cut a huge pile of firewood for his ships.
He was very pleased to see that that he, at least for that first community he stopped at, that they were very supportive and they were very eager to trade.
Knowing he had only a short summer to explore the river, Captain Morgan steamed on. By mid-August, he reached Nenana, and to his surprise,
by the time Captain Morgan had come to this area here, which is we're just about 200 miles above Tanana, he found a very large community right on the banks of the Nenana and the Tanana River. He had noticed a big pile of firewood, fresh firewood cut, and so a couple of thoughts was coming to his mind. One was, how did the native community, this far up the river, know that they were coming? Because they've been just traveling day and night, 24 hours a day, so they, of course, they didn't see any other canoes or anybody else pass them. So he did not know about the unique, communication systems that the native community had in those days.
the captain was also surprised by who was there waiting.
He said there was a very distinct gentleman standing on the bank, and who was dressed, very eloquently and with a lot of dentalia, which is like the Athabascan jewelry, and so he knew that that person was probably the leader of the community. And so when they parked the vessel and he got off, and this chief came up to him and introduced himself as me chief, me Tanana chief, and he did speak a little bit English.
Captain Morgan also had a surprise for Chief Thomas.
And so the captain commented to him that, well, that's real neat, because the boat that we just came up on, that's the christen's name. The christening name was the Tanana Chief. The chief was very pleased that that was named after him.
Chief Thomas went aboard the Tanana Chief that summer day. Looking back at the village from the deck, he could have no idea of the changes the next 20 years would bring. 4 years later, word spread of gold discovered near a trading post about 60 miles upriver from Nenana. The people that flocked there, searching for wealth, later named the town Fairbanks. Soon, Nenana had a thriving trading post to supply prospectors on their way upriver. In 1905, St. Mark's Episcopal Mission began educating children from surrounding villages, but the biggest change was yet to come. In 1915, a mere 17 years after those first two stern-wheelers churned up the river, construction of the Alaska Railroad doubled Nenana's population. A valley once isolated from the outside was a new home to laborers from every corner of the world. Watching their ancient fish camp become totally transformed, the chiefs all over the interior met to decide what to do.
All the chiefs were asked to come in to Fairbanks. They met in Fairbanks in the late 19-teens and had about a 3-day conference held right down on First Avenue in Fairbanks.
Out of those meetings grew the Nenana Chiefs, an organization that is still looking out for Native rights to this day. Despite their unity, the Nenana Chiefs couldn't save Nenana. The railroad was built right on the riverbank that the Athabascans had been using for centuries.
Nenana River. See, the Nenana meets the Tanana right here. And we use the main Tanana River for fish. That's our living for thousands of years ago. When the railroad come in through here, the machinery and stuff come right through and went right through the village. So they moved. From here, they moved up the river.
The natives were forced to move upriver about half a mile, but this wouldn't be the end. In order to cross the river, the railroad constructed a long approach and bridge. For a second time, the railroad went right through the native village. Al John grew up under that railroad bridge.
They didn't pay us nothing. That was our land, I figure, because my grandparents and everybody lived there for thousands of years. That's where we were raised up. The white man run us over there. Yeah, that's not right, what they done.
Tocatelli is an Athabascan word that means the mountain that parallels the river. This mountain, just across from Nenana, was used as a burial place for centuries. After crossing the river, the railroad slices right through parts of Tocatelli. Many of the old graves were simply dug up like tree roots during construction. Al John remembers working there years later.
To this day, you dig down a couple of feet, you bump into legs and arms and skulls. I worked over there in 1948 in lunch hour, and me and a couple of old Indians, we get a paper bag and pick up bones and take it off to one side of the railroad track and dig a hole and put the bones in there.
But soon after it was completed, the railroad saved the lives of hundreds of natives and made Nenana famous. In the cold winter of 1925, diphtheria hit Nome. Many people were dying. Many more were sick. There was a cure, however, a serum that could stop the disease. The serum was rushed north from Seward on the new railroad. Al John was 8 years old when that train stopped in Nenana.
The baggage man handed the package to the railroad agent. The agent took it into the depot, and we didn't know what it was. It's pretty well guarded, like. And when the railroad depot agent brought it into the depot and unwrapped it, we watched him through the window there.
Not only did the serum need to get from Nenana to Nome, but it needed to be kept warm. If it froze, it would be useless. That day, the temperature was near 40 below.
Today, you got all kinds of stuff to keep that serum from freezing. Light stuff. Them days, you just had fur like bear skin blanket, wolf skin blanket, fur. Double wrap on the sled. Little box come to be that big. And outside of the depot on the side door was a dog sled.
The mushers that carried the serum to Nome became legendary. The story was a sensation all over the country. Over 40 years later, their feat became the inspiration for the Iditarod. But for the mushers, it was all in a day's work. Though the serum run was completed in record time, the idea of relaying freight on dog sleds was a way of life here. May Speck's father was a mail carrier in Nenana.
He had the contract from here to Tanana, but then he had a mail carrier that came from Tanana to Manly Hot Springs and met him there. And he didn't only carry mail, he carried, like cases of eggs and groceries and different things for people along the route. And the first night he would go 30 miles to Minto, or that would be the first day. And then from Minto, the next day he'd go to Manly.
When Heartbeat Alaska continues, we'll learn how the natives in Nenana continued to adapt and succeed. We'll also learn how this little town, hundreds of miles from the ocean, became one of the busiest ports in the state.
Hey, my name's Blair Laws. I'm from Norvik, Alaska, and this is my dog, Tobuk. Heartbeat Alaska, we'll be right back.
Each week, Heartbeat Alaska brings you great stories from all over the state. And we couldn't do it without the generous support of Frontier Flying Service. Frontier gets our camera crews where they need to go. So whenever you see a Frontier plane, give them a wave. Say hi from Nuxet. You might just be on Heartbeat Alaska.
Frontier Flying Service, covering Alaska for over 50 years.
You're late, Dad.
I know.
I'm almost done with my homework.
Yeah?
Tessa's mad at you.
What's mad at me about?
You said you would play basketball with her. She said she'll never speak to you again.
Parents that are involved with their kids are more likely to help keep their kids away from drugs.
Nothing but that.
Just for you, the Ruby Residence.
The Ruby Residence is a private residence for women only who are visiting Anchorage for healthcare services.
Come on in.
We would like to invite you to stay with us.
It's just like home. I mean, it's just so comfortable. I love it.
Meals and transportation to your doctor's appointments are provided. We do accept Medicaid and insurance for lodging and meals.
Just for you.
Call 333-8746 to make your reservations now.
At the time of the serum run, Nenana, Alaska, had about 5,000 people, but when the railroad was completed, the population dwindled down to about 300 people. In 1930, America was mired in depression. People all over the country were hungry and jobless.
There were a lot of times we didn't have nothing to eat on the table. I had to put on my snowshoe, get my gun and get a rabbit or a grouse or something to cook.
For the natives in Nenana, hard times meant returning to their roots.
Like I went to school, a lot of native kids went to school there, and their parents would supply the church and mission there with moose and caribou, whatever. Because I was in school, my dad brought moose up there, you know.
But the cooperation that helped the people here survive couldn't save many of their buildings. Gilbert Ketzler lives in this house he built just down the river from Nenana. He remembers the way the town was.
That whole block where the Civic Center was all businesses, Hall Sprint, Some were part logs, lumber, tar paper, sawdust.
But in just a few hours, all that would change.
And I think the fire started in Alec Fowler's grocery store, and it just took the whole block. I was there, and we was a whole bunch of us kids and some grown-ups were hauling merchandise out and putting it across the street.
But the people that live in this town are not the kind that give up. They adapt and move on. Cog Hill store was rebuilt and is still a big part of that community. To overcome hard times, the people once again turn to the river. Nenana is the one place in the interior where barges can reach the railroad.
Nenana had already, by then, established itself as a head port for pretty much all the way down to St. Mary's and St. Michael's, to far as up as to even to Dawson City. We had a number of stern wheelers that made would pick up supplies off the railroad here and run all the way to Dawson.
Today, these barges have replaced the stern wheelers. Each spring when the river ice goes out, they are loaded down with supplies and fuel for villages up and down the Yukon River.
It's still today, Nenana supplies villages as far as Fort Yukon, up the Yukon River, and then down to the mouth of the Yukon River. So it's rated like the number 5th or number 6th port in the state of Alaska.
Exactly when the river will break up and shipping can begin has always been a hot topic around Nenana. As a matter of fact, in 1917, people here started betting on when the ice would give out. As the years went by, that simple bet turned into Alaska's unofficial lottery. Thousands of people guessed the exact time and date this famous tripod will fall through the ice. At $2.50 a guess, the funds pour into this little town.
That's kind of an economic boost in Nenana, especially in April when they start to count the tickets and hire 20 or 30 people that had not really had any jobs throughout the winter and needed cash. It was a little boost in Nenana's economy, because about half of the revenues of the Ice Classic is spent within the community, about $300,000. So, and that's quite a bit of money for a small community, new fresh cash coming in.
The Nenana Ice Classic isn't the only ingenious enterprise in this little town. When the number of students in Nenana's high school dropped off, they built this.
We have a student living center here that has a capacity of almost 100 students, in which Nenana has always had a very good education system here.
The center gives students from other parts of the state another choice for high school. For some, the live-in environment is just what they need.
One of my best friends came here last year, and she told me to apply to go to school down here because it's a better school than being at home. A lot more experiences and a lot of different things you can learn. And when you go to college, you'll know what it is to live in dorm life.
A little over 100 years ago, the river was Nenana's only link to the outside. Now, with both the railroad and the highway, the place between two rivers has become the place between two bridges. Looking to the future, it's a good place to be.
Heartbeat wishes to thank Hagelin Aviation Services Incorporated for making our stories possible. We travel on Hagelin Aviation and we thank you for choosing them too. Hagelin Aviation has been serving Alaskans in the bush for over 20 years.
We fly Hagelins all the time.
Operating with 29 aircraft at 8 stations across Alaska and servicing over 100 destinations daily. Hagelin Aviation, your ticket to ride in rural Alaska.
Kenai Peninsula College, part of UAA, and Alaska Christian College, working together for the future.
For the first time, I really looked at my life like I held a mirror up to it, and I got to see who I really was.
An opportunity to challenge yourself.
Made me feel like I was at home.
Small classes designed for your success.
It's challenging, but it's not overwhelming.
A quality education in a rural environment.
We are definitely a family, and everything that comes with it.
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Frontier Flying Service. Thank you, Frontier, for getting Heartbeat Alaska airborne.
This year, another group of travelers passed through Nenana. The Iditarod race passed through Nenana for the first time because of weather, and we'll have that story next week on part 2 of Nenana. If you know of any Alaska Natives and Native Americans that have been called into military service, won't you give us a call, 907-563-7440. Also, if the weather in your part of the state is causing strange things with your hunting, your subsistence, with your daily life, we want to know how the weather is affecting your life in rural Alaska. Once again, email me at jeanniegreen@ak.net or give us a call at 907-563-7440. Won't you do that? God bless every one of you, and we'll see you again next week.
To purchase a copy of this program, ask for Heartbeat number 31503. That's 31503. And send your check or money order for $20 to Jeannie Green Productions, 6216 Old Seward Highway, Anchorage, Alaska, 99518. Or give us a call, 907-563-7440.